Good afternoon. Thank you, Beth, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Here we are, Aaron to my left, Nora to my right. And what you see in front of you is the team here at Hero, Connor and Strauss, our attorneys, all dedicated to serving clients in the areas of estate planning, elder law, estate and trust administration, litigation, business succession. And this is what we do. So we're here. Most of you know us from Elder Law and the Elder Law Forum. We try to bring you information, education, and today, in anticipation of family gatherings and families reuniting, sometimes for the first time in a year, with children visiting parents, we think it's an excellent time to begin the process of crucial conversations. And we're very lucky to have with us today Nora Barato, who is with Everhome Care Advisors. And Nora, talk a little bit about what Everhome does.
So Everhome is an independent case management organization, and we have nurses and social workers that are aging life care coordinators, and we provide in-home assessments and care planning and working with families and older adults in looking at what the best care options are for them in the home. And the biggest role we're playing now is advocacy because of all the changes in healthcare and access to community services. There's our team. As I mentioned before, we have a clinical social workers and nurses who all have the experience not only with aging services, but in healthcare, which I think is extremely important to have in today's world.
And as we as attorneys solve problems for clients, very often those problems are not legal problems. They're social problems, family problems, dynamics, things in the family situation that prevent the legal solutions from taking hold. And so we work very closely with social workers, with nurses, with case managers, and in particular with Everhome Care Advisors, which provides a service to our clients that we can't replace. So it's vital to have your team, and we'll talk more about that team concept as we go. And Nora, we do this kind of every year. People come to us in January having seen their parents for the first time in a year and say, oh my goodness, what happened to mom and dad? But there are opportunities here to have conversations.
I think holiday time is very important because it does bring up among the siblings, have you seen mom and dad? They look like they've deteriorated. Or, you know, what's going on? Do you know what's happening? It also is a time of looking at how you can talk about this without being negative. Everybody, and especially myself as we age, I don't like to think of myself as incapable. And, you know, I know sometimes I get some barks from my kids and it's like, what do you mean I can do this on my own? I don't need your help. So we really need to be mindful about people's feelings about being vulnerable. And we really need to think about changing that mindset because there is a lot of negativity out there about aging. And we are really looking at how we can phrase things differently and talk more positively. And what can you do to help them as they age, and what do they want?
And Aaron, these conflicts, if not addressed in the family context with crucial conversations, often end up in your bailiwick, which is litigation.
Yeah, so we encourage mom and dad or aunt and uncle or whoever it may be to make a decision on their own about who's going to help them, how they're going to be helped, all these things we're going to talk about. Because if a court has to step in and appoint somebody, no guarantee that it's going to be the person you want and things are going to be handled the way you wanted them.
Yeah, it's not a happy Christmas when you're dragging your parents through court in a guardianship proceeding, nor is it happy for the parent seeing their children squabbling over what should happen. So getting this done early, getting clarity, getting documents in place, and we're going to walk through the process. But Nora, you're right. There are a lot of barriers, a lot of hurdles that you have to get over to get this conversation done. But don't stop trying, because this is the time to do it. It's the time that you're going to gather. It's the time where you can open up and hopefully address with today's guidance the issues that are so compelling and so important, especially in our post-pandemic world. And Nora, we work in the healthcare field, whether we like it or not. And during the pandemic, we were dragged into all kinds of situations with clients. We had clients who had parents in nursing homes that couldn't see the parents. The parents developed COVID and couldn't get information about the parents' condition. Parents going to the emergency room and having just a scorcher of a time going through the ER. And Nora, the pandemic isn't past. We're kind of going through a reorientation of the hospital crisis right now with the triple whammy of COVID and the flu and the virus. But what's your experience right now with the families you're dealing with? You and I talk about it all the time.
My heart goes out to families and caregivers because they are so totally overwhelmed, not only by the delays in services and, you know, even going to the emergency room now is an act of Congress. The ambulances are backed up. I was in the emergency room recently and I saw 5 separate ambulance companies backed up triaging to get into the emergency room. So not only are there long delays, but everything has gotten so complicated. And if you're thrown into a field where you don't know how to navigate, it adds to the stress level unbelievably. And I have to say one thing with caregivers, my experience in the hospital for many years, what I say to older adults is, well, you know, we're going to set you up with home care. Oh, no, I don't need it. My daughter will take care of me. And you talk to the daughter and she says, what? How can I do that? I'm working full time. I have my own family. So these are all things that haven't really changed, but post-pandemic, things have gotten unbelievably much more difficult for caregivers.
And we have clients who can't get out of the hospital.
Exactly.
There are no beds available in nursing homes because they're closing wings, they're short of staff, they're not taking new admissions, can't get a rehabilitation bed. And when we have those cases, we can lawyer up, but that's not necessarily what the client wants to do, is pay us an hourly rate, Aaron, to go in and advocate to get them a proper and safe discharge. But Nora, that's something that Everhome does on a regular basis.
Right. What we do is really navigate and contact the case managers in the facilities. We'll help them with the process because it's all hands on deck. And in order to move people and get them to the most appropriate environment, you know, we all have to work together and really collaborate. And we have that healthcare background, so we know the levels of care. We know what's appropriate care, what's not appropriate care, and making sure we can get people in the appropriate care settings.
And Aaron, there are Medicaid changes too that have made this dilemma actually worse.
Oh, certainly. Getting services has always been a bit of an issue. It's become more and more of an issue because the system has changed, especially on the home care side, to push the hours that are available downward, whether irrespective of the amount of care needed, which has been a big challenge.
And we have a new independent assessor system. We're going to talk about that in a bit. NIA is the organization, used to be called Maximus, that is now in charge of all of the Medicaid assessments. So you have an independent assessor, you have an independent physician, and then you have a managed long-term care company who's going to determine the actual number of hours. That whole process is now 4 to 5 months long. So people in need of home health care who are relying on Medicaid now have extra hurdles. There is a lot of hue and cry going on about the system and the impact the system has had on individuals and their inability to get through it in a satisfactory manner. So we're hopeful that we can get some legislation to fix this. But right now, that whole system is in a state of disarray. And your care managers, Nora, actually sit with people through these evaluations because they don't have any laptops or technology, and it's a virtual visit.
Right. And, you know, they really need to advocate to make sure and guide the families on, you know, what is important to say, because what they may not think of is, you know, giving that detail about specifically what that person that's being assessed can do is really important, because a lot of times older adults minimize the amount of help that they need.
So this is the landscape on which today's program is being presented. It's a very dire situation for someone who needs urgent care. Going into the hospital right now is a very dicey proposition for all the reasons being discussed. So here is why crucial conversations are necessary now. And Aaron, when that crisis occurs, you need to have the right legal documents in place.
Yes, 99% of the time, once the medical event has happened, it's too late to do any of this stuff, right? Whether someone is incapacitated temporarily or for a long period of time, we need someone who can make decisions, and the law may help a little bit, but the documents are really necessary, especially power of attorney and asset protection. The law will not do that for you. And in the medical sense, there is an act in New York that will allow someone to make a medical decision, but if you're a single person or a widower, you have 5 kids, they all have the right to make the decision. So they may not agree. So what you need to do is appoint an agent to make healthcare decisions, someone who's going to make the decisions that you want made, whether that be continuing life under all circumstances or not. And you need to appoint someone you trust to handle your finances and make other decisions for you. And with the power of attorney, you can appoint 1 or 2 people. Yeah, that's up to you. You make that decision based on the dynamics of the family. But these are important things. If you leave it to your kids and you have 5 kids, they're all going to have a different idea. So getting out, talking about it, saying why you've chosen this nurse or this person to make a medical decision, and whether you just go with the oldest first and on down the line, or some other people sprinkle people in different roles, because there are a lot of roles to play: executor, trustee, power of attorney, healthcare proxy. So it can all be done, but it can't be done without talking about it, letting people know that you're doing it, and maybe why you're doing it.
So that's part of the crucial conversation. And Nora, in addition to the legal documents, people need to start looking at what will happen if. What happens if I have a stroke, I break a hip, I have an illness, I get diagnosed with a disease like dementia or Parkinson's? What's going to happen? Who is going to be in those roles, and what's going to be the care plan? Those are things that should be thought of in advance, right?
Right. The biggest thing is knowing what these roles are: power of attorney, healthcare proxy, what it involves. I can't tell you how many times I hear families say, "Oh yeah, I'll be a healthcare proxy," and they don't have any idea what it is. I mean, sometimes I think I can make all the healthcare decisions. Well, no, the person has to lack that capacity first before the healthcare proxy takes place. But having a plan, you can't access care in an emergency. Care has to be planned out, and accessing care really needs to be thought out and looked at very carefully. But that goes back to the role of what can I realistically do. I just had this discussion with my son. He says, "Well, what makes you think that I wouldn't be here?" I said, "It's not a matter of you being here. I don't expect you to be here 24/7, but we want to age in our own home. So we're making progress and plans now because, we want to add a bathroom on. We want to do this, we want to do that. But I need to know if you can support that. If you can't, then we need to look at other options and alternatives." I'm hoping we don't need this till years down the road, but we need to have the conversations that far in advance now.
And once you've identified the legal documents that are necessary and the care plan and the people that are going to be part of the care plan, then you got to talk about money. How are you going to pay for care if it becomes necessary? And we're going to talk about that next. But these are all the issues that you need to think about. How do you get across to your loved one, to your parent, that this is a concept that needs to be discussed, that you need to have the conversation now? So many people feel, Nora, it can never happen to me. Or I can't tell you, if I had a dime for every client that said, well, if that ever happens to me, I'm just going to go out in the woods and end it all. Well, by the time that happens, you forget where the woods are. And that is not a realistic solution. So there are 4 very basic questions that you can start with, right? Around the table, in the living room, around the fireplace, in the car. Mom, Dad, where do you want to live when, if something happens as you age? If you live to be 100, where do you want to live? And Nora, most times people are gonna say, I wanna live right here in
Right,
my home.
right. 99.9% want to live in their own home. But the question with that goes, okay, so if you want to live in your own home, what kind of adaptations do we need so we can make it possible? Because all somebody needs is one good fall, and that can do them in. And that's the reason why a lot of people can't go back to their home, because they can't get up the stairs. The doorways aren't wide enough. They have 10 steps going into the home. So that's more positive, constructive discussion than saying, oh, I don't know that that's possible.
It can also be, though, that a lot of people here in this area is sober, right?
Right.
Do you want to stay in that other place, or do you want to be here? Or
Yep.
where geographically can really play a role in that as well.
In the Carolinas, in Florida, wherever it is that you have the warm weather home, is that where you want to be? Because the systems are different. We practice in Florida, we practice in a number of states. It's very different. The landscape, the care available, and the financing available when it comes to paying for care, Aaron, is very different in other states than it
Yeah,
is in New York.
I mean, New York has a great system of benefits for that purpose. They fund the system. Other states do not fund the system. They generally don't fund home care programs, and assets that are not available here will be considered available in other states.
So do you have powers of attorney, healthcare proxies? Have you done the necessary legal documents? Do you have a plan in place? If you do need care and you want to get care in the home, who is it going to be and how are you going to pay for it? Have you thought about that? And here's the question, Nora, that I think is the most important. How can we help you? How can we support you to
Right.
fulfill your goals?
Right.
And
Well, be prepared for pushback. What we commonly get is, we're fine, we don't need help. Mind your own business, we're not going anywhere. I don't want to talk about all that gloom and doom. We have a will. A lot of older adults say, oh, don't worry about it, we have a will, and don't realize, the will kicks in after you die, not while you're still alive. But creating a aging in place plan should be just as common as we create a retirement plan. So that's the way we need to think of it, and we need to look at, helping older adults look at these are normal transitions, because most older adults say, well, I have my funeral arrangements in place, but they skip the most important part, and that is, how can I age successfully in my home?
go ahead.
Overcoming the obstacles, again, don't criticize. And if I hear this, I really say to families when they say in frustration, if you don't do what the doctor says, you're going to a nursing home. That just puts their back up. And, you need to turn it around and say, we want to keep you as independent as possible. By not following the directions, that may end up having an unintended consequence, which if you don't take your medicine, then you may get sick and end up in the emergency room. And we just don't want things to go out of control like that. So you really need to stress the importance of proactively avoiding potential problems.
I think in my experience, stubborn people live longer, right? So, I mean, these conversations can be difficult ones, but you want to present it in a way that, how can I help you stay here? How can I help you do what you want to do?
Right.
And depending upon the stage that your parent or loved one is at, I had this conversation, tried to have this conversation with my mom who had Alzheimer's. And she went from 0 to 60 with Alzheimer's. And one day we looked at her and her gaze was gone. She was a blank stare. And we hadn't done a lot of planning because we were just taken by surprise at how quickly it onset for her. I wanted to get a care manager in place. We didn't have Everhome at the time. So I reached out to a gentleman named Joe Jackson, who I had to bring over at that point, this is 20 years ago, from Lenox, Mass. And my mother said, no one's coming into my house. I don't want anyone in the house, which we hear all the time. So Joe and I put a pair of jeans on, a couple of t-shirts, and I brought Joe into the house. I said, hey, Mom, how you doing? This is my friend Joe. And Joe sat down and, hi, Mrs. Pirro, how are you? And they started chatting. I said, Mom, I have to go upstairs. I'll be back in a few minutes. So I went upstairs, and about 45 minutes later, Joe said, "Okay, Luke, come on down." And he had done a full assessment, just chatting with my mom as a friend of mine. So sometimes you have to be creative, depending upon the situation, to get what's necessary. And Joe then did a comprehensive plan for my mom. We were able to find 2 aides for her, brought them into the house. He helped manage it, all the things that Everhome now does for clients. And we were able to successfully keep my mom in her home with that care plan under a care manager's direction. Without that, we were lost. Even as an attorney, I was lost. So having a team, Nora, is key.
Absolutely. A lot of times, you know, if families have a difficult time getting their parents and that on board, just putting a call out to the primary care doctor. Sometimes they have care managers in the office, and they can relay to the doctor that, you know, the family is trying to make plans and they're being a little resistant. Sometimes when we say, "Oh, just tell them that the doctor ordered it," that generation says, "Oh, I'm really touched by the fact that he cares that much or she cares that much." Going with services that they're familiar with, Office for the Aging. A lot of seniors do use some of those services. Aging Life Care Coordinator, the best way that we get in the home is by talking to the families and saying, you know, they have to want us to come in the home, but we need to develop that relationship. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. So just calling them, talking to them on the phone, letting them know what we do and why it's important, and developing that trust, because I wouldn't let anybody in my home if I don't know them. So we got to really put ourselves in their shoes and make sure that we understand it's a process. You might not get there overnight, neither with an elder law attorney. It's a process.
The other thing I want to say is there is one development that is somewhat positive, and that is that Medicare Advantage plans have really expanded the scope of services.
Yes.
And they're pushing into the elder care marketplace with other services. CDPHP, for example, has a service called Papa Pals, which is volunteers who come in and provide companion services through a Medicare plan. Very often those Medicare Advantage plans are cost-free. So open enrollment for Medicare Advantage is coming up in January. One question for your parent: do you have Medicare? The answer is yes. You have Part A, Part B. Do you have a Part D prescription drug plan? Do you have a Medicare supplement plan? Do you have a Medicare Advantage plan? Have you shopped for your Medicare coverage to make sure you're getting the most out of the benefits? This is an excellent place to start a conversation, because they really should have Medicare. Medicare Advantage is now opening up for services, many of which we're going to talk about today, but opening up to that senior marketplace. And those services are provided through Medicare. So we don't have to get to Medicaid if you can satisfy the needs through that Medicare policy. And very often, Aaron, people who won't listen to children, and even lawyers who have parents, they won't listen to them. But if you take a parent to an attorney and you hear it from a third party, very often that is something that is going to resonate, and you're going to get some credibility.
Yeah, I mean, we have to ask questions that it's amazing to me how often people don't think about whether their home is suitable for long-term care purposes, right? Whether they can go up and downstairs, whether there's a bathroom. Because if we're doing a trust plan, we're trying to protect assets for long-term care purposes, we need to know where someone's going to be,
Right.
Whether this house is suitable for them. So you need to pick somebody who knows what they're doing, who knows what the eligibility requirements are, who knows how to access them. It's not something that the person who does your closing and your traffic ticket is going to be able to do.
So again, the team that you want to look for: the medical professional, the elder law attorney, the aging life care coordinator. And Nora, you're part of the ALCA, the Aging Life Care Association.
Yes, this is a national aging life care association, and we have to meet our certification requirements, and they're very stringent. And we have to have expertise in many different areas: the aging field, the field regarding entitlements, insurance, and advocacy and aging issues. So it's a great organization, and I think what you're going to see is that the aging life care coordinators are starting to pop up everywhere because it really has become a specialization. And the greatest thing that I see that our role does is that advocacy and education of the family and the older adult as they go through their life transition, because there's many, corners and sharp turns. You don't anticipate a fall and a fractured hip and going down the rehab route. And that whole process is an education. It's very overwhelming for families when they don't know what they're doing. And when insurance is really ticking, saying you got to get them to the most appropriate level of care, or they're going to have to pay. And, if you don't meet the acute care medical needs in a hospital, and you say, well, I can't get up there till next week, well, they'll say your insurance isn't going to cover and you're going to have to pay privately for them to be in the hospital. So you want to avoid those situations at all costs. And you can by being proactive and, getting the education and knowing where to turn and gathering that team ahead of time.
So let's dig into some more details. Aaron, we talked a little bit about the legal documents necessary. We have about 20 minutes left. If you want to just walk through these quickly.
Yeah, so just quickly, a power of attorney is who's going to make financial decisions for you, okay? Healthcare proxy, who's going to make medical decisions when you can't. Difference is power of attorney can do it before you're incapacitated. So be aware of that. Disposition of remains appointment, in case there's going to be some dispute over what your arrangements are going to be, you can lay that out ahead of time. People take a lot of comfort in that. And then a will, which is the most basic estate planning document.
And again, find an experienced elder law attorney to do these documents, because we see them come in all the time that are just woefully inadequate. You want to make sure you have a comprehensive power of attorney, a healthcare directive with a living will, and you have the will that is done in a way that it covers all the needs. But a will isn't the last resort here for people in this situation. Trusts.
Yeah, so a will means you're going to court, and people get this confused all the time. In New York, an estate has to be open for at least 7 months. Generally, the best estate is done in 9 months, and that's very rare. That's something without any issues or asset issues or land that won't sell or anything like that. So a will means that court's going to be involved. People are going to be put on notice. If you use a trust and you fund it correctly, you will not be in the probate area, and your kids can move on without court intervention.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about one type of trust in a minute, but when you're doing this planning and you look at paying for care, there are really only 3 sources. You're going to pay out of pocket. And what we're seeing coming in our office, and we do Medicaid applications, we help clients private pay and do tax planning, but the cost of nursing home care is north of $16,000 a month. And it will probably get a cost increase in 2023. So be prepared. If a parent has to go to a nursing home, $16,000 a month. So they don't want to be there, nor do you want them there. But nor the cost of home care can actually be more than that if you need 24/7.
Absolutely. The current rate for even a companion, and that's not somebody that's doing hands-on physical care, is $30 an hour. And it's a lot more for probably $35 now for a certified home health aide. So that's very expensive. And it's like, if you need 24-hour care, it's like $4,000 a week. So it's really important that you're looking at options ahead of time and having those discussions ongoing.
So is there enough income? Are there enough assets? Do you have long-term care insurance? When clients come in and we start a conversation and they don't tell us they have long-term care insurance, we go down a lot of different paths, and then they pull out the policy. That changes the game. If they were smart enough, if you're smart enough to have it, if you haven't bought it, and you can buy it now, because when it comes time to pay for long-term care, that policy is going to cover home health care. It's going to cover assisted living care. And yes, it will cover nursing home care too. But it's a fund that can keep you at home and keep you independent. That's what long-term care insurance can do for you. There are life insurance products and other products available that can do the same thing with riders, but the one program that does pay for care is Medicaid, and we have to get rid of this myth that Medicare is going to pay for home health aides, assisted living, nursing home. It does not. You have to get to Medicaid. Most seniors are ill-informed on this, and you have to educate them. So you have to let them know that Medicare, even though the Medicare Advantage plans are getting better, they do not cover long-term care. So Aaron, when we get to Medicaid, this is now a means-tested program. It isn't an entitlement which everyone gets at age 65.
That's right. So you have to apply and be eligible for these services. And that means in the nursing home arena that there can't be gifts in the 5 years before. But in home care, right now, we're not facing that dilemma. The state has made some momentum to change that, then kind of went backwards. So we don't really know where we're going to end up on that. But right now, we still have no look back. These are the income and asset numbers you can have as an individual or a couple. And as you can see, they're not gigantic. Now, these are much larger than they are in many states, probably all other states, but can't say that for certain, but at least 90% of states. So, but even in New York, $1,500 in income isn't going to get you very far. And $28,000 in assets, if you're living at home and your heating unit goes or you need a roof, you're going to have a plan for that. So we don't want you to spend down to these levels. We want you to plan.
New York is, as Aaron said, far more generous. Most states, that asset level there, the individual $28,133 next year, most states are $2,000. That's it. That's what you get to keep. Go to Massachusetts, New Jersey, Connecticut, all our contiguous states, Pennsylvania, $2,000, not $28,000. So New York gives you a much greater amount of assets, but still, how are you going to live long-term on $28,000 of assets and that $1,500 a month income? It's a very difficult game to play. So rather than spend all the assets down, is there a way, Aaron, that we can shelter assets and do it in such a way that we avoid these look-back periods?
Absolutely. So in a situation like this, hopefully we're getting out in front of the problem. We're meeting with you before these problems exist. And we're doing a trust plan, an irrevocable trust, what we call a Medicaid asset protection trust. All right. Because for the nursing home, we're going to have a 5-year look back. Now, if we have a well spouse, we might have some ways around that. But generally speaking, that's where we're going to be at. If you come to us and you need community care right now, a home-based Medicaid, we can set up a trust even though you've waited. I don't advise relying on that because we do think that that will change in the future.
The Department of Health, New York State Department of Health, has advised us that laws that were passed way back in 2020, which put in place a 2.5-year look-back period for the community side of this, which have been put off because of the COVID emergency, health emergency, those are going to be implemented April 1 of 2024. So we have a little more time where we have this ability. If clients come in today, and they do, walking in the door today, we'll sit down with them and they need to get Medicaid home care, but they have assets over the limit. We can have it arranged in such a way that Medicaid is available to them in just a few weeks, in this case, January 1. So we can have Medicaid home care financial eligibility in place January 1, but that's changing. So people need to get out in front of the curve, and the time to do Medicaid planning, Aaron, is now.
It's now. It doesn't get better if you wait. You may lose potential agents. You may lose assets. And you certainly are not going to have the choices available to you if you wait till the last minute. So you need to look at what your income is. And again, if we're doing proactive planning, all your income is going to stay with you. You can even put items in a trust that create income and have them come back to you. Your assets, we're going to look at what's exempt and not exempt. Okay, because that's important. Certain things in New York are exempt. They could be big assets like a retirement account or a home that someone's living in. But generally speaking, we don't like to rely on the person living in a home to make it exempt. We want to get out in front. We want to put that in a trust. We want to see who your trustee is going to be. And then we're going to get this plan in place and run your clock.
So as you're having the crucial conversation, you identify the decision makers, you identify what the care would be, where they want to be. If you want to be at home, here are the rules that apply if you want to get care paid for by Medicaid. And in New York, the Medicaid system is still the most generous in the country. And that is, we can get 24/7 care in the home paid for by Medicaid. Now, we're going to talk about some other issues in the Medicaid system, but it is still available 24/7 to get paid for home health care in the home. And you need to plan for this. We have a 2.5-year look back coming in for home care. We have a 5-year look back for nursing home care. Getting out in front of it means creating a trust, Aaron, that helps shelter those assets.
Absolutely. So we call this a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. It's a form of irrevocable trust. Someone other than you is going to be the trustee, whether that's a child, other relative, friend, someone who is a responsible person who you can rely on, right? You're going to name who your beneficiaries are long-term. You're going to have the right to live in any real property owned here. You're going to have the responsibility to manage its upkeep. If you put, again, brokerage account here that creates income, that can all come to you. So it's not going to affect you on an income basis. These are the assets we traditionally put in here. Life insurance is a big one because if it has cash value and you're a married couple, if you leave it to the spouse, they may be in a similar situation to you. You can lose a lot of potential asset that way. And really have a lot of flexibility over this trust. You can ultimately change your beneficiaries. You can change your trustee at any time. And it even can be revoked because it's drafted carefully. And depending on the situation, we're going to give you advice about how much money to keep out. And if you're going on Medicaid, that's going to be less. But if you're proactively planning, we're going to tell you to leave more out depending on your comfort level with that.
I wouldn't suggest that you get into these details in your crucial conversation with a parent.
Agreed.
But these are the realities. And what we do is we draw it out on a flow chart for you. Here are your assets. Here's your income. You're not going to give any of it up. It's all going to be protected. It's going to be in a trust where you control the trustee, you control the beneficiaries. If you need to get money out of the trust, they can draw the money out of the trust for you. But we're going to leave enough money in your own account to cover any expenses that you anticipate. You're going to have immediate access to any IRAs or 401ks. And we're going to keep control of this in such a way that you're going to get a comfort level. And most people, once they see it drawn out on paper, they see how it plays into their own situation, get comfortable with the idea of sheltering the assets in this trust. It also avoids probate.
Absolutely.
So you kill two birds with one stone. And when we're doing the Medicaid planning, the Medicaid Asset Protection Trust in its current form is as flexible as you can ever imagine. It is in effect a revocable trust because they can change beneficiaries and with the consent of beneficiaries, break the trust under New York law. It's a very flexible document. We don't know how long that's going to last, how long the government's going to sanction the use of this type of a trust. They know it's there, but they have not targeted it. They've targeted a lot of other things to cut Medicaid expenses, but not that trust. Anytime they do things, they will grandfather that trust in. So getting it done sooner rather than later is a key. So that's your asset protection tool. When you apply for Medicaid home care, you can shelter income in excess of the limit using something called a pooled income trust. When we have spouses, we can have one spouse with assets over the limit and use something called spousal refusal, where they can keep those assets and the other spouse will still be qualified. And currently no waiting, no look back, but again, April of 2024, this is what we're going to be facing, a 2.5-year look back for home health care services. So getting out in front of it, being proactive, Nora, is really a key. And our office files Medicaid applications as well. So financial eligibility is the start of that. You have to then prepare the case because they've put up all of these gates to getting care. So we have to prepare the case for increased hours, get services while waiting out the process, advocating for hours and appealing adverse decisions. There is an immediate needs application that we file very frequently for clients that most people don't know about that will expedite the process for people. But Nora, this is really where we have to collaborate because there are a lot of home care programs and people have to be able to get service during this period.
Right. One of the things that we do is the education on the different types of managed Medicaid programs that there are and look at what we feel is going to be the best to meet that person's needs. We don't have time to go into all of them right now, but when the consumer directed personal assistance program, where if you have grandchildren or neighbors and friends that really want to help care for you, there is a way under Medicaid to get them so that they can be a paid caregiver. And then you can control, you know, that individual providing that care and the services. And that's between you and that fiscal intermediary that helps guide you with managing, hiring that individual. We have the nursing home transition and diversion program. There's also a TBI program. Those programs are designed to keep people out of nursing homes and into the community. We have the the Elderly PACE program, which is an interdisciplinary model, and it, you know, that is going to an adult day program and having, you know, access to social work, transportation. So we really look at the individual and their needs and what they want, what works for them, and caregivers, how much caregiver support can be supplemented in that. The key is you really do need to work with a care manager or an attorney or both, guiding in and out as we go through that process.
And Aaron, a chronic care, a nursing home Medicaid application is pretty plain vanilla because it's a nursing home.
Yes.
You know that it's a known quantity, but with home care, there are so many nuances and different programs that working with the care coordinator is absolutely essential to identify all of those different options.
Absolutely. I say all the time, we can advocate a position of why you should get more hours, but I need something to base it on, right? We're not medical professionals. I can't say this person has X and this requires, you know, these steps on a daily basis that take this amount of time.
And we have new laws in New York that went into effect in 2022 that have brought in the independent assessor I mentioned earlier, an independent physician, so you don't get to use your own doctor's statements or affidavits with regard to the application. Managed long-term care companies still deciding how many hours get allocated, and they will almost always under allocate hours. So having advocates that can appeal those decisions and know the game is a key to getting the care that you need and the number of hours that you need. And these have caused tremendous delays and uncertainties. And Nora, I know that you work a lot with people. So what can this conversation lead to? What are some of the creative things that are happening now in the marketplace?
So one of the things that is the best thing, the best outcome from the pandemic is it really thrusted the medical profession to use telemedicine. And it has really brought to the forefront the use of technology in the home and, you know, among the physicians, even with mental health. And what we do at Everhome is we're helping older adults to make that transition. And we have a caregiver app, and there's a 17-inch touchscreen in the home. And what we're doing is automating that plan of care and breaking down it into simple tasks so that family caregivers can always have an eye on what's going on in the home. And we do that through the in-home video. We also do the activity monitoring with sensors and alerts that monitor, you know, that person's normal routine. And if there's something that's happening outside of the routine, like they're getting up, you know, umpteen times in a night, we teach them to really look at, well, is that new and different? A lot of times, using the example of somebody that has a UTI, it doesn't rear its ugly head in an immediate way. You start noticing changes where their level of confusion is getting, you know, more advanced, and they're going to the bathroom more. So we're able to, through the use of technology, get on the phone with the primary care physician a lot sooner and address it so it doesn't become an emergency room visit. The daily schedule and reminders, and again, this is a touch screen tablet. So we've had 90-year-olds that have never touched any kind of technology in their life, and they love this because it helps them be more active in their care, and it reminds them to take their medicine. It reminds them when appointments are, coming up. And it's also addressing the social determinants of health. We have on the touch home screen, they have access to news, current events. They have educational programs that they can access. So there's games, people like Wordle. Those are things that, are important to older adults. They really like to be involved, and they also like to be involved with family. And I can't underscore the importance of this. Families downloading pictures of going on trips and that. One of the older adults said, I feel like I was on vacation with them. But the ability for families to have that app on their phone and be able to see what's going on in the home, and like mom took their medicine. Oh, I forgot mom has an appointment today. And if they see that, they're not doing their blood pressure or their blood sugar, then, or they're having a sad face and it's a bad day, they can video chat right in to say, what's going on, mom? So we can't stress what a game changer this has been in older adults' lives. And we've had clients that we've been able to keep home, keep out of the hospital, and when they've had a change in condition, to get hospice involved early on, so that they could die in their own home. So I think people really need to change their mindset and give this a chance, because this has taken a lot of stress off of the caregivers, because they can check in multiple times a day.
So this is the future, and the future is now, because this is available through Everhome. It's
Right.
available, it's being used by people all over the capital region. And it's making a difference in people's lives, allowing them to stay independent, stay at home, and allowing the caregiver to go to work, to have a job, to have a life, to go to their children's games, yet still have the confidence that everything in the home is safe, secure, and that they're communicating with the parent. Wouldn't it be nice to give your parent that 17-inch touchscreen for Christmas, Nora, and be able to load up all your family photos on there and videos and all the Christmases of people around the world? They can be brought right into the living room with that touchscreen tablet, and it doubles as a medical device, because it's reading things, it's giving them their medication schedule, their calendar, and there are other things that go along with it, Bluetooth devices that can be used to measure things like blood pressure and glucose
Right.
levels.
Right. And we're making changes with the technology each and every day based on consumer feedback. So it's a great gift. And, it is far more cost effective to have this in the home than to, wait for an emergency or a crisis to happen. And, you're having to pay for 24-hour care.
Again, being proactive. And one of the things that you want to do is keep your loved one out of the hospital, because
Right.
once they get into the hospital, it's a stream that takes them into very negative places. And one of the features is telemedicine with an ER doc.
Yes, and if there is a change in condition, you do have the ability to just hit the screen, and then on the caregiver app, they can hit it in an emergency, and they can get access to a telehealth physician immediately. That's really important, because a lot of people, either panic and just call the ambulance and send them, and they didn't really need to do that. This helps you decide what's the most appropriate care. Yes, they'll tell you, yep, you need to call an ambulance, and we're going to send you right there to the hospital. Or they'll say, no, we'll just follow up with your primary care physician. But they're doing this for medical and well as mental health. And I think that the pandemic has really, that is the one positive thing that we see. It gives the tools to identify problems early on and intervene without waiting for a crisis to happen.
And being proactive is utilizing all the tools available to you. So the touch screen in the home, the app on your phone, gives you the connectivity and the ability to know what's going on and to keep an eye on things and make sure that you're prepared at the appropriate time. These are some testimonials from people that are utilizing your technology, which I'm not going to go through them in detail. Hopefully you can download the slides. We're going to get you the slides, I think, and you'll be able to read these. And taking the next steps is key. And Aaron, for us, that is a consult.
That's right. So if you have these crucial conversations, or maybe you've had them and somebody needs to look over these documents, because if you've done them and they've been sitting somewhere for 5 years or 10 years or longer, it's time to pull them out, look at them and see if they need adjustment. So you can give us a call or send us an email. We'll be happy to meet with you free of charge.
And peace of mind is the bottom line to solid legal planning and also solid care planning on it.
Yes.
So I don't know if we have any questions, Tim. No questions. If you want to post a question, you can do it now. But we're happy to talk to you. The team of elder law and care manager has been something that has been blending together. It's kind of like the Reese's peanut butter cup. When it comes to elder care, you need the legal services and the advocate of an attorney, and you need the care management and the advocacy of a care coordinator. And together, it provides a very potent combination and a potent team. So have that conversation with your loved ones this holiday season. Sit down around the table, around the fireplace. Talk about things like, do you have the legal documents? Have you thought about where you want to live? Have you thought about finances and how you would pay for care if you need it? Questions that will start dialogue. We're happy to finish the conversation for you. If they say, listen, I don't want to talk about it, well, would you talk to an elder law attorney? No charge, no obligation, just get the facts from an experienced elder law attorney, whether it's us or another elder law attorney. Make sure it's someone focused in this area that is so crucial. You don't want to talk to an attorney doing real estate, DWIs, not that there's anything wrong with that, but they're not focused, and this is very highly sensitive and very timely information that you need to have. And on the care side, get a consultation. They'll come to the house, they'll meet you there, they'll do the assessment right in the home so that you know. And knowing is being able to do things. It's power. Knowledge is power. So with that, Aaron, final words?
Have the conversation and give us a call.
Nora?
We're there. Just give us a call if you're not sure. We can explain in further detail. And one thing that I do need to say is for kids, what I'm noticing is a new trend is when parents try to talk about their failing health, children are saying, oh, I don't want to talk about that. You're going to be fine. You're not going to die. Nothing's going to happen. So kids out there, when you have that conversation, if you find yourself saying that, bite the tongue and think and say, okay, maybe I need to have a crucial conversation in a different manner. Please don't hesitate to contact us and give us a call. Our information is www.everhomecare.com. Thank you and happy holidays.
And there are wonderful testimonials about the technology. My dad, we thought we were doing my parents a favor. We bought him a VCR for Christmas 25 years ago. And the VCR, when the power went out, would start blinking. And my father would call me up and say, hey, son, can you come down and reset this VCR? So I'd have to drive an hour to his house and reset the VCR for him. The tablet technology that Nora was talking about, I've watched it, I've seen it. I have an aunt using it. She's 100, okay? My dad could have used it in his sleep. It is the future. So do yourselves a favor, educate yourselves as to what's available, then educate your parents as to what's available. Start the conversation in a positive way and have a wonderful holiday. Have these conversations. Don't let it drag you down, because these are things that need to be talked about. Stay positive, stay healthy, and we hope that you all have a very wonderful holiday season. Thanks.